Chelle's going to tell us about how the house came to be in the family and a few words about the family at the house.
Hello everybody, can you hear me?
Yes.
Right, I'd like to tell you so much, but as you're standing you won't have time to hear more than about 5 minutes, I imagine, so I'll try and keep it brief. But this house was bought by our grandfather. He was living in London in the East End and running a fruit business which had been started in turn by his father, who we all knew. No, we didn't know because he was dead before I but he's known in the family as Zyder. And he was a wonderful man and lived to the age of 93. But my mother loved him, but he was a reprobate. He knew apparently he knew every prostitute in the area and every pub. Paddock Wood would have been one thing, it was the East End, remember?
What a Richard.
So, when our grandfather, Morris, found that he was not very well, his doctors said, "You have connections with the country, you would be better off to live in the country." And so he bought the farm here in 1919, and it blows my mind to think of him bringing his wife Rachel, who was a London lady, a completely Jewish lady, to come down to this strange part of the world which wasn't as accessible as it is today. No motorways. I don't know how often she got up to London, but there was of course the train, but it was a real journey. And Roz will tell you that in those days, to go to the station, they went by horse and cart. So a very different life. And one of the first things that Morris did was to find a maid for Rachel, and he found Bessie Wotton at the local school. And she lived with us for the rest of her life. She taught me all about the birds, wild birds, not the birds, the wildlife here. She taught me all my wildflowers, all my birds, but in particular, she would tell me, "You can't have that, it's not kosher." She knew her kashrut and laws of what we could and what we could not do in Jewish kind better than we did, because she was trained and she knew. And so we have memories of them, and it's a bit like we tell the Pesach story. He came with a few to sojourn, but soon his brother died in 1924, and I'm not quite sure when, but he brought Auntie Sylvie down here to live with them, and she lived here until she was about 16. Oh, incidentally, sorry, going back, but Bess was only 13 when she started here. 14. They all say 14, I swear better. 11. Anyway, so Sylvie lived here till she was about 15, was? Yeah.
How old was Sylvie
when she was 15?
14, she came out to London, stayed in the East End.
14, she reckons Auntie Sylvie went when she was 14. And the other person who did visit here quite regularly was the Zeta, who managed to feed the cows with too many apples so they were ill. He managed to do all the wrong things, but it wasn't through spite because he loved the animals. And we had a lot of animals here through the time. We have had goats and pigs, and that was during the wartime, and sheep.
Kosher pigs.
We never ate them, but we did keep them. And we always had a cow, and sometimes two, and horses, and chicken, and just behind us here, in the old orchard, geese.
Yes,
And geese were better than dogs. You could always hear if people were around, because the geese made a hell of a noise. And I was frightened of the geese at mating time, in springtime. They'd come rushing at you. Yes, we also had...
I don't know why.
because they were guarding their nests.
Oh, sorry.
And they'd have... and we kept pets. We had budgerigars just the other side of the fish pond, and we kept rabbits, and that I knew all the weeds that could be fed to the rabbits because we had to pick rabbit's meat every night.
And hamsters, because I've got a picture of me pushing them in the pram.
That's right. Yeah.
Sure that
And
wasn't
cats
guinea pigs?
and dogs. There was, and normally there was never a time here when there wasn't a dog. It's only recently that there's been no dogs. And so it's been a very animal-friendly place. The house, the farm consisted of several orchards. Starting from the old orchard, the Tom's Hut or 10 acres, the salt box, the signal box, the plat, the long field, the cornfield, and both Ursy and I were trying to think, in later years, we acquired the farm acquired the last field, which was...
the bogey ponds.
Yeah, well, it had a bogey pond there, but it was up by the line that became Transvaser. And it was a wonderful childhood because we just ran and lived in those orchards. We knew what to find in which orchards had the best apples. Mushrooms, I was going to say. We picked up dropped apples and got a little bit of extra pocket money. We went hop picking, just usually for half a day or a day. So we really experienced the country life. Now, so much of Kent has become one grand leisure park, but it was a real working farm, and there was work all through the year with pruning, ditching, hedging, spraying. And on that I was thinking about fertilizing, because our dad in the wartime dealt in shoddy. How many of you know what shoddy is? Yep, good. It's the waste product from the textile, and it was reckoned to be a good fertilizer. And my dad sold a lot of this, and then one of his clients complained and had it analysed, and I think there was about 1% goodness in it. And so it got spread all over the farm. But at least we didn't do the dreadful things that nitrates have done to other places. And as to the house itself, well, when Morris and Rachel first came here, there was no bathroom, nor electricity. By the time our mother came to live here in 1933, Ursy was just a little tot. But Mother came down here because both her mother and father were seriously ill, and she came to look after them. But as I say, she put in electricity and had the bathroom built.
And the telephone.
And the telephone, no, the telephone was earlier, I think. No, the telephone, okay, we argue on this. But the telephone tells you how early the telephone was put in, because we were Paddock Wood 33. We were the 33rd family in the area.
The station was 22. The station was 22.
Oh, the station was 22, as he says. So, the family have never been frightened of innovation. And going further a long time, when Ken came, he loved his parties. And there's some of you here who can remember those wonderful parties. And one of the first things he did, he was complaining he didn't like the fact that we had the dining room, the hall, and the sitting room. The sitting room in Mother's time was only used if special guests arrived, or if you had to deal with some special business. Otherwise, the sitting room was a no-no. And the dining room was so cold that you were glad to get out of it. Only ever used at Paice at the time.
That's true.
Whilst the house was usually renovated and made smarter. Anyway, when Ken came, he discussed with Sue and Sarah, who I think unfortunately have now left. Oh no, Sue's still here. And he said to Ken, well, turn your stairs round. And Ken said, can we do that? And he said, yes, of course, I know what I'm doing. I'm a builder. I know about this. So he turned the stairs round, blocked off the front door, which was never used anyway except by hawkers and gypsies, yeah, passing people like that, and made it into one big party room, which was lovely. He also, I'm talking about Ken, developed the stables into a lovely party room. I think I was the first to use it as a party room for my 18th birthday, which was great. And I say, the house has had many parties. Our mother always celebrated bonfire night here, but not in the way that by the time Ursy and Ken came, it was a big thing with wonderous food and a great party time.
And great
fireworks.
Yes, always a
Great
wonderful
fireworks.
punch here,
When
great
you-
fireworks,
When
yeah.
you throw the fire into the wheelbarrow.
So, yes, there were firework parties. We had a very special party here, just before Mum died, a pigeon a ben for Michael, which was lovely. And some of the older ones of you, it has to be the older ones, may remember that. And we gave a party here for Mike and Ali to celebrate their wedding, and also for Cindy and Barry to celebrate their wedding. So it has celebrated weddings, but in particular, in 1924, our Uncle Jack wished to marry our Aunt Lily, but there was another family in the East End who thought Uncle Jack should marry their daughter and had made a lot of fuss about it. And in order, well, Aunt Lily always said she was slapped round the face with a fish when she was shopping. And so to avoid all trouble, they were married down here in the farm. As to births, I was the first one to be born here, And where's Maureen? She's the second. Yeah. And I think we've been the only 2 births here.
Yes, I think.
Knowingly. Might have been others.
We have, however, welcomed many babies, and in particular, we had Barbara and Robert stayed down here with Mum when Ros was expecting her babies. Yeah, and also afterwards.
How many more?
Somebody we don't know about.
And Betty, you came down here with Margaret, didn't you, when she was very small? Yep. And yeah. And the farm has always welcomed. Well, Mum loved babies, and she always welcomed them. It's always been a home and refuge to anyone who needed a little respite. And saying that, not from the Sugarman side of the family. Our Uncle Mark stayed here in one of his long leaves from the army and cooked as if he was a cook in the army, and he cooked great batches of tartlets that we couldn't accommodate them all in the cupboard. So it's seen many things, many changes. Ken was always keeping up to date with things, and I'm very sorry because Andrew tried to find them. He has some lovely pictures of Ken trying to evacuate us all out of the upstairs windows. And I'm not joking with you, he did get us all out, including Ursy, Maureen and me. So it's been a place of welcome, lots of changes, and I hope that gives you some idea of things. I haven't explained too well who's who, but the farm was left to the 4 children of Morris and Rachel, and they were Annie, Jack, Mark and Fanny. And during the war in the 1940s, all those children of those families came to live here, and we made wonderful friends with one another. Yes, love and hate, but it's a wonderful bond, and we have a lovely picture of that up here today. So I think I can say the farm has always been welcoming, please God it always will, and it has a lovely 100 years of history.
Oh, thank you very much, Auntie Chelle. Thank you for giving us a potted history of the farm.